Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, across the Citadel, across the Twitterverse. We are back for another official Neo Tokyo episode of Interlinked. Today, we're joined by Omar from games.gg. First out, a big shout out to our sponsors, Playa3ull and Shrapnel. We brought Shrapnel on as a partner.
Introducing Shrapnel. The Shrapnel team is comprised of industry experts from AAA Games and Blockchain Studios. Headquartered in Seattle, Washington, they're a team of designers, producers, artists, programmers working at the nexus of games, television, movies, and graphic novels. Spun out from HBO, they are the BAFTA and Emmy award-winning talent behind such notable franchises as Halo, Call of Duty, Madden NFL, BioShock, Destiny, Star Wars, Hawken, Skylanders, Westworld, and over 30 more titles. Members of this team directly contributed to winning more than 40 entertainment awards, including a few Emmys and a BAFTA, while reaching over 100 million fans. As the first competitive multiplayer FPS that allows players to create, own, and trade their player-created content, Shrapnel has the potential to be the next industry-defining FPS franchise for a massive generation of players. We'll see you on the inside.
What's up, crypto gamers? Huge shout out to our sponsor, Playa3ull Games. They are inspired by gamers and funded by their community. They have a epic game on the Epic Games Store, a third-person shooter called Nexus. Hop on in there and check that out. They're also currently selling nodes, so if you're interested, check that out at their website, playable.games. That is a 3 instead of a B on Playable. Now strap in for the rest of this episode of Interlinked. Very thankful to have them as part of the podcast and AMA team, and we're super excited to get into games.gg. So without further ado, Omar, please give us a little introduction. We're glad to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I think I like to call it a Web3 gaming platform that is, I guess, kind of meant to act as the home of Web3 gaming, but some people call it like a super app. Other people call it the IGN of Web3, but essentially we started games.gg. Technically, the platform went live last November, so it's almost actually just over a year, with this idea that we would, bring everything in Web3 gaming in one place. So the mission's always been to improve the experience of Web3 gaming, meaning onboarding, meaning education, meaning, access. The way we do that is essentially by curating content. So if you go to the platform itself, which is games.gg with a 3 instead of the, I guess pretty obvious why we did that, but some people always still mispronounce it. So thank you for actually getting it right from the first try. We curate content around, I think it's now 300 plus games, where you can check out reviews, you can check out guides, you can, take a look at all the recent news. So I think some of the stuff that you guys are about to discuss on this episode has actually already been covered on our side as well. So it's nice to just keep up with the space, but we've also added a lot of cool features that kind of take the platform a step beyond, the IGNs and whatever comparisons I was talking about, because you can actually play some of these games from the platform. So if it's a browser game, you can jump straight into the game directly from the platform. Also, we hand out rewards in this kind of quest feature, which essentially acts like user acquisition for games, but it acts like, I guess, a rewarding platform for users that want to interact with these games at early stages. We've worked with pretty much any game that you can name over the last couple of months. I think we've done an average of like 7 to 8 quests per month over the last 6 or 7 months. And it's been everyone from Illuvium to, Big Time, Block Lords, Phantom Galaxies, anything you can name. So that's kind of the idea of the platform. We are currently sitting at 150,000 plus users. A lot of it obviously comes from just people interested in the space, but some of it also comes from people looking for specific games. So I guess our bet or kind of our stance on this industry is kind of being like an investor, where we invest our resources and time in this case, where we cover a lot of games, and then if one of them does really well, then the idea is that would kick back to us, right? So you guys were just talking about Shrapnel earlier. If Shrapnel does really well and suddenly 1 million people want to play it, they're going to go to Google and type how to play Shrapnel. The idea is they will then find us because we've done that early SEO work. So this is kind of, our stance on the space and how we do things.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you said you have 150 or 115,000 users already.
150, so 150. It's actually, I think it's slightly closer to 156, but yeah, just crossed
Wow.
150 this month, December.
That's pretty incredible. I want to dive deep into that and like how did you get those users? Because one of the biggest things that I think we've both kind of seen and all the projects we've talked to is that one of the big things, and obviously outside of the pod too, just talking to a lot of projects, user acquisition is a big issue, a big topic, and a big pain point for a lot of different projects. How did you guys actually go about doing that? It seems like, maybe one strategy could be questing, partnering with the games. You kind of go game by game or different community by community, partner with them, quest with them, do some joint marketing, and then you get a portion of their audience that comes to become your audience, and then you just keep doing that over and over and over again, and you can build your audience over time. But is that what you guys actually did? And then did you do anything else, or if not, like what did you do to really grow in addition to the SEO?
Yeah, no, good question. I'd say SEO was probably the first step. So we made sure that we were, if not first, then at least top three for every single big game that you'd be thinking of. So if you like type how to play Illuvium or how to play Big Time or how to play Shrapnel or whatever, we would be top of mind there. Obviously, content has kind of been one of the key things that we drive user acquisition through to the platform. So it's all sorts of stuff, but we either do like breakdowns of games, kind of like, looking into a game's economy or like a game launch or whatever. And that kind of goes super deep and it tends to get a lot of maybe viewership on YouTube or whatever. And that drives back to the platform. Or we'll do something like, top games this month lists where, we'll tell you which 5 games kind of surprised us or were the best this month based on kind of announcements or features or things that they've integrated within the games. So content has always been obviously one of the things that we've done. You're right to say that we've basically piggybacked off of a lot of games, and the fact that we do quests means that I can onboard like different types of gamers as well. So, some platforms struggle with that just because if you have one certain type of like user, meaning a demographic or whatever, then you're kind of stuck with that. Whereas if we do a campaign with, let's say, random example, Cross the Ages, big French community, a lot of like TCG players, if they come to our platform for a campaign, then obviously they're likely to stick around and join other campaigns. And all of a sudden you have this influx of like French users, right? And so you can start targeting them with other content that they might be interested in, whether that's kind of by adding French as a language for the platform, which is something we're actually planning to do in 2024, or by showing them more TCG content. So, if they like Cross the Ages, maybe they like Parallel, or if they like Parallel, maybe they like Gods Unchained. That's kind of the idea. Also, the awards, which we actually just wrapped up in December, it's kind of really this, I guess, big user acquisition funnel for us where we essentially bring a lot of different industry leaders into one room and we decide with the community what the top Web3 games for the year are. There's obviously a voting element, and so games drive their users to vote for them. But at the same time, there's this huge prize pool. Everyone's trying to win like a PC, a PS5, like a bunch of very gaming specific stuff. That kind of period acts like a funnel for a lot of our user acquisition. So I think, if I look at the 150K plus, realistically speaking, by last year, December, when we did the awards, we were probably sitting at like 30K. So it helped us get like the first 20 to 30,000 users. And then we spent, all of 2023 with just content and SEO and stuff getting like up to maybe 100 and I'd say 20K or so. And then you have that last sprint. So the awards are kind of always like that last sprint where like you'll get 30K or 40K in 1 month. So we did that again in December, and that's kind of how we've been constantly growing the platform. We've actually spent 0 on ads since we launched the platform, but that might change in the future. But I do recognize the number is why a lot of games work with us, because it's realistically speaking, even if you just look at the DAUs, we have multiple 10K, 15K, 20K DAU like days, and on some occasions, like if it's a bad day, maybe we'll have like 3,000 to 5,000, which I might say it's a bad day, but it's a lot of games that's like multiples of maybe what they have in this space. And so that's kind of the appeal for a game, right? Because they want to work with you because you can get the new users, even if it's like 100, 200, 500, 1,000 users, like it's it's a new player base essentially they can tap into.
Oh, that's phenomenal. Yeah, it's really interesting how everybody kind of goes about with marketing. You know, like some folks are like, I want to buy paid ads wherever I can. I want to pay influencers. I want to run these campaigns. And others are like, I don't want to spend a single dollar on, buying ads. You all and Pixels are have share that in common where you haven't spent any on paid ads. So it's very interesting, and congratulations on all the success going from 30K to 150K, 2023. I mean, I think you guys are just so well positioned now, like during the actual, like very publicly recognized beginning of the bull run. I mean, you guys are perfectly positioned. So that must be really exciting internally.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. I mean, I guess it's also the intention. That's what I always tell people, and it's really underrated. And not many people talk about it, but it's really why you do the thing that you do. Because I think in a lot of cases there are so many different like quest platforms. There are so many different game discovery platforms, and I think the struggle for a lot of them, or like maybe where they go wrong sometimes, is like why are you in this space? Like what is the thing you're actually trying to do? Like there's the thing you write on the website, and then there's the thing you're actually trying to do. In some occasions, like maybe it's trying to raise money from Web3, and that could go really well or really badly. But if that's the intention and you fail to do it in a bear market, then you're flushed out. In other cases, it's like, I guess, recognition, or like being called like the number one platform, whatever. And like I think we're easily that, but we don't really flaunt that figure around or that word around. And so if that's what you're after, and then again you struggle to do it or something goes wrong, like I think the motivation behind building a Web3 game discovery platform is always what kind of comes to question. For us, it's always just been about, like, in the most selfish way possible, I'm trying to get my friends into Web3 gaming. And the way I'm doing that is essentially by helping build this platform that will like make it easier for them, and like make the games look less scammy, and like not talk as much about tokens and things like that off the bat. So that goal hasn't changed because I'm still trying, right? So I'm still playing League of Legends, Call of Duty, and CS and all this stuff with them, and I'm still trying to get them into the space. And until I manage to do that, like I won't really feel like I've accomplished the goal. So like the money, the raises, the recognition, people saying, "Oh, it's the number one brand," whatever. Like that's kind of the extra sauce, but like the meat of it is really me getting my friends in. Like once I've done that, I'll tell you, oh, it's a successful platform. So yeah, I guess that's also something like we don't really talk about much, but it's really why we basically grew through the bear and are now about to look at potentially like the next bull run. And there will be more platforms, there will be more, discovery portals and quest platforms and all that stuff. But I always tell people, just remember like who was around when like nothing was moving, when Bitcoin was down, when the industry was boring, quote unquote, when the games were not ready yet. Like just remember who was around then, because they'll likely be around later on as well, post mania, post euphoria.
Oh yeah, I love the metric of trying to onboard the personal network into Web3 gaming. That certainly resonates. My little brother's a Call of Duty maxi, and so for anything first person shooter, I run by him and I'm like, "Are you interested in playing this? Yes, no," and I use that as a little bit of like a gauge. So like so far one first person shooter has been able to get my little brother's attention, so I use that as a metric. Um, Omar, I'm a big believer in past is prologue, and I'd love to get a little bit of sort of yours, games.gg's origin story. Where did the platform come from? Where did the idea come from? If you could paint us a little picture.
Sure, yeah. So my background's actually in marketing and social media. So I started off out of college at L'Oreal, which you might recognize. Very different from gaming, cosmetics, but I guess helped me get kind of the early marketing foundations. And then I jumped into the social agency side. So I worked for a bit on clients like Visit Dubai, Dubai Tourism, which I guess did like billion impression campaigns and things like that for the city. But my first touch point with gaming really was through social media in the form of esports in the MENA region. So I used to work with Ubisoft and Nvidia on their Rainbow Six League in the MENA region, from like a tournament organization and a social activation standpoint. And then we ended up like going into a lot of big clients such as Epic with Fortnite, obviously Riot with League of Legends and Red Bull. So there were a lot of like these esport campaigns or, MENA region activations for, social purposes or whatever. So that was kind of my professional touch point with gaming. I've always been a gamer. So I guess my backstory is I've played video games all my life. And so being able to kind of put the skill set that I acquired through my education and, professional experience, and then combining that with kind of my passion for gaming was like a dream come true. The Web3 aspect was a slight bit different because I just got into crypto for fun around 2018. And then obviously, if you were around back then, you ended up experiencing the IDO hype with, platforms like DAO Maker and CDeFi and Polkastarter. And so in I think it's 2 years ago now, I reached out to Polkastarter's CEO over LinkedIn in a DM where basically I said, that I really like the platform because I had used it before. It was kind of like, for context, anyone listening in, Polkastarter is like this Web3 fundraising platform. So think Kickstarter, but for Web3 projects. And I had used it multiple times. And I reached out just saying like, hey guys, love what you're doing, but I think you need to focus more on gaming. That's where you really get a lot of users to come into the space. Then the CEO replied and said, oh, we're, looking to do something around that, but not exactly sure what. Would you like to jump on a call? So this was 2021. We hopped on a call, immediately connected, asked me if I wanted to join and actually build that gaming department. So I was like gaming department employee number one, I guess you could call it. And at the time, it was just a Discord server. So like I joined and we just built a Discord server where gamers that were familiar with Web3 or that were interested in Web3 would come in and like talk about Web3 games or play Web3 games or rant about Web3 games or just, actually just play games in general. Like a lot of times people will play Dota and Fortnite and CS and stuff in our server. And so that's kind of really how it began. 2021 post, I guess, decline in the market where everything was getting really boring and stuff. We were just building a community from the ground up. And I think that's probably the actual real advantage that we have over other platforms or other, I guess, whatever you want to call it, competitors, etc., is we started by building a community first before we built the product. So we, went through kind of setting up a Discord, reached, I think, 30K users or something at the time. Ended up setting up a Twitter account back when it was called Twitter. So before Elon, and then got that up as well, where we were basically inviting people to join the Discord. So it was always really just funneling people to the Discord. And then people asked like, oh, if you guys are like reviewing all these games at early stages, because you got to remember 2021, people weren't talking about Shrapnel, right? It was still Axie, it was still copycats of Axie, it was still like the promise of Star Atlas, which, maybe is still the case, but a lot of these games that we're talking about today on a daily basis weren't really around then. And so we ended up streaming on Twitch to like show some of the gameplay that we were getting our hands on. And then that ended up turning into a YouTube channel. So like it was kind of like we were doing a bit of everything, and it got really confusing and annoying for community members because they couldn't keep up with all that was happening. And so the idea for the platform was born out of that frustration of like, damn, if I need my daily dose of like gaming or whatever, like I might jump into IGN, I might like just load up my PlayStation store and take a look at what's trending or whatever. But in Web3, like that doesn't exist, right? Like I can't just go into the Discord and scroll all the way up to last Tuesday and try to figure out what are people talking about. And so the idea for the platform was kind of born there. I'd say around March 2022, approximately. And then we really started working on kind of an alpha version of the platform that not many people saw. I think we only really brought in like 1,500 users to the alpha version of the platform, where we were just really seeing what would people click on, what were the most, requested features, what were people struggling with, etc. And then around November of 2022 is when we went live with the actual platform. So again, going back to my point, the process we went through was really build a community first, and then start building a product that the community is kind of, wanting or demanding, and then actually raise the money. So post launching the platform, we then ended up raising $2 million earlier this year, which then kind of, I guess the main reason why we wanted to raise was because we could no longer be a department within Polkastarter, because like it became this huge thing on its own that had to like coexist without interference. And so we were obviously sharing a lot of resources and a lot of, team members and stuff. And so we wanted to kind of have our own separate tech team. So we basically built a community, built a product, and then raised money, which I think every Web3 project should do in terms of like the flow. But funny enough, it tends to be like raise money first, build a product second, start building a community last, and like force fit the product into the community, which I think is like the worst idea ever. But yeah, that's kind of, the journey over the last couple of months. And then obviously the team, we just kept growing from that point on, recruiting in areas that we need to recruit in, and kind of scaling across the board, whether it's from like a technical standpoint or from a marketing standpoint. And yeah, now it's games.gg. It used to be called Focus Starter Gaming, and then obviously we rebranded it to highlight the fact that it's now its own entity and to give it like more of a gaming name, because Focus Starter Gaming was a mouthful, not gonna lie. But yeah, that's kind of the journey, I guess. Sorry, long story, but this is how I got here, and this is how we got here, I guess.
Oh, hey, Ben, you're on mute there.
Yep, accidentally muted myself there. But I absolutely love the long form, by the way. So, we're definitely here for the longer answers. That's why we have this platform, is to do the deep dives. So, all of that is encouraged. I saw a tweet that you put out that I think it was yesterday. You're like, it's 5 a.m., but I can't sleep because I'm so excited about what's coming in 2024 for us. Can you maybe just give a snapshot about like, one, where do you see the whole crypto gaming sector right now? Like, where are we as crypto gaming? Another, one of your posts that I thought was hilarious was, you were quoting somebody saying, "There's no fun Web3 games." The next line down, you're like, "Shut up. Here are 10 games you can go play on the Epic Store right now." I thought that was hilarious. So maybe you can give us a snapshot of where we are in Web3 gaming from your perspective, and then what's about to happen in 2024. Because I think a lot of us are very excited about it, and I'm very curious from your perspective, given your vantage point, where you see that really going and what you're most excited about as well.
Yeah, I need to stay away from Twitter at 5 a.m.
Don't we all?
I think, to be honest, the place we're in isn't that different from where we were with free to play a couple of years ago, and where we were with mobile gaming a couple of years before that. I think we're at a point where there is still resistance, but there's more of a, I guess, sense of respect that's growing because of the players within the space that are starting to raise the bar. I think it was audacious of Web3 gaming to think that it demanded the respect that it deserved back when we only had Axie as like the only viable product and everyone else was trying to copy them. I think it's slightly changed the narrative a little bit now that we have games like Parallel and Wildcard and, Shrapnel, Off the Grid, etc., that, essentially could be standalone, good, fun games, full stop. You don't even have to call them Web3 games. I think, I watched this change over the last 2 to 3 years, where people used to say it's really good for a Web3 game. And like that has died, where now people are just saying it's a really good game. I still hate the AAA narrative or whatever, because I think most games are not AAA. There's only a few people that have raised enough money to be AAA, but realistically speaking, that narrative has changed, where now people like look at Wildcard and say, "Oh, that's actually like sick. Like I'd like to play that." Full stop. Like, not I'd like to play that because I want to own my character in game. I'd like to play that because I want to own the cards. Like, they just say I want to play that. Full stop. And I think I saw a survey the other day that was like, the appetite towards Web3 games is growing, but asset ownership is not like the primary reason why. Like, they just want to essentially either play the games that offer new kind of dimensions, or change boundaries, or set new boundaries completely. And I think that's refreshing, because I do think gaming is struggling at the moment. Like, if you take a look at just the gaming sector, I know it's the fastest growing. I know it's bigger than, film and music and all that stuff, but like esports teams are declining. Most of them are shutting down. They haven't made money in like the last, 2 to 3 to 5 years. If you look at like gaming, if you just play video games, I think gaming's been a bit stale over the past couple of years, where like you get the same shit over and over again. And it's like remakes of games that you maybe enjoyed a couple of years ago. There's barely any like fun new concepts that come out. I think games like Hades and things like that are refreshing, but every now and then, like how long can you keep going on with Call of Duty, Call of Duty, Call of Duty, Call of Duty, back and forth, and like even Call of Duty and Activision jump back and forth in timelines, where it's like now it's Modern Warfare 2, but now it's like Modern Warfare 3, but now we're going to like this new completely different like universe. I think it like that is where gaming has kind of reached as an industry. And I think Web3 games present the solution for it, because I'll tell you from, I guess a very biased perspective, as someone that worked in esports for a bit, the ability to cash out prize pools immediately, which you could argue is like a DeFi thing. It doesn't have to be a GameFi thing, but that ability to like actually hold the cash that you just won instantly because it's been sent as a transaction on the blockchain is something that a lot of people would have appreciated over the last 5 to 10 years, because I've seen people win like 50K, 100K and not be able to cash out for like 6 to 12 months because, I don't know, it's a Filipino 16-year-old living in Manila, and like the central bank completely refuses the idea that this much money is entering their account. Like that, I think, is a big solution. The other thing is you look at, I play a lot of FIFA and I've played a lot of Call of Duty, and my struggle with both has always been continuity, like in terms of progress and in terms of like the time that I poured into it. So for example, if I play FIFA, I don't know, 15, and I pour so much money into the game, all these hours, I like managed to get Ronaldo as a card. There's no reason logically that I can think of as to why I can't somehow sell my Ronaldo card, take my coins, go into the next FIFA and like start at an advantage, except that EA just wants to keep making the same amount of money from me as a user every single year. And I've seen that with a lot of my friends that maybe play it like semi-pro or pro, where like they'll literally spend 10, 20, 30K on FIFA packs in Ultimate Team just to like get a really good team and then compete throughout the year and then do it all over again every single year. I think that's the most predatory system that you can look of in terms of like monetization, and EA is like the best at that. I think, obviously Web3 changes that, because you can take your assets, sell them, take that money, decide to either continue or like fuck off, play a completely different game. That's completely up to you. So that's another area that I think Web3 fixes. And, as cliche as it is, we always make fun of Web3 fixes that as kind of a sentence or as a response to things. But I genuinely think Web3 like brings that refreshing sense of like new dynamic, which could and should force game developers and studios to like make better decisions, right? So instead of trying to milk us for money, buying Ultimate Team cards, like figure something else out, bro. Like improve, pro clubs or something. Like make money in other formats where you might actually open up the door for more players to like enjoy your game in a different way. So I think that's where we are with Web3 gaming. Like people are starting to look at it a bit more seriously. You've got Ubisoft coming in with 2 games in The Watch and Champions Tactics. You've got a lot of like Japanese studios that are kind of betting on a lot of these games, and you've got games coming from the East that I think will outperform the ones coming from the West, to be honest. Some of these you don't even talk about much, and they don't even have Twitter accounts. Like there's a game called Mir 4, which has been around for quite a couple of years. It's a Web3 game with, I think, don't quote me on it, but I think it's like over 20 million players or so, and there's 9 million wallets created. Damn. Like I don't think people recognize that 9 million wallets means like 9 million gamers in theory, but again, like we look at Axie and we say, 100K, that's probably the most any game has. So games like Mir 4 will continue to emerge from the East, because you're talking about, there's a game called Night Crows that's, I think, the top grossing game in South Korea. They're about to add a Web3 feature, I think, in January of next year. Like stuff like this will keep flooding in. And, titles like Maple Story from Nexon and so on, like once they enter, I think it'll change the narrative even further, because you'll start saying, oh, holy shit, like Maple Story is back and they've built a Web3 game. Maybe Web3 is not that bad. Let me check it out. And then you'll kind of get into this like, black hole of Web3 games and what the industry presents. So that's what I think we're at in terms of the spot. In terms of what next year holds, I tweeted that because of like excitement about features and stuff that we're doing internally within the platform, but also because of the fact that a lot of the games that we've been kind of expecting or looking forward to are about to release in like a public, I guess, launch state. So, you talk about Big Time going public at last. You talk about Illuvium probably going public at last. Obviously, Shrapnel is coming out with their first like open beta, I guess, or alpha. I'm not sure what they're going to call it in early Q1 of next year. Off the Grid is obviously a contender there in terms of like games that we want to play and get our hands on. So I think once these like games deliver something, the narrative will change, because for the last couple of months or years, it's been like, oh, it's closed alpha, it's closed beta, it looks like it's shit, it's too early, blah, blah, blah. But like you're getting into a point where the games are about to be ready for like mass users. And that's when I think things get really interesting, because if a game does really well, our platform does really well because it covers it. And so if someone wants to learn more about Shrapnel, they've got to look somewhere for it. And they're not going to find it on IGN. They're not going to find it on Kotaku. They're going to find it on games.gg. So that's kind of where some of the excitement comes in. But also from like a platform perspective, I think we're only really at like maybe 20-30% max potential at the moment in terms of like the actual platform roadmap, because there's so much stuff that we haven't announced. We're kind of one of those teams, like we don't like laying out everything we're going to do. We just like kind of announcing shit. So like, earlier this year we said, hey guys, Quest's going live now, enjoy. A few months later we were like, by the way, you can play your favorite browser games on the platform, peace out. Like that's kind of our approach to launching features, because you manage expectations, and you don't disappoint. I think a lot of Web3 projects don't do that. Like they start off by saying it's gonna be this huge thing, it's gonna be amazing, wait until month XYZ, and then like there's an unforeseen circumstance and they have to delay something in the roadmap, and then their community like just shits on them because they've disappointed them or whatever. So I think that's going to be really refreshing. And I also think the Web3 elements that we're about to keep adding into the platform are going to get really, really interesting next year, because so far we've kept it pretty like simple and straightforward, which is nice because it means it's sustainable. Like I don't bring you to my platform because you're expecting to be rewarded with like me giving you an NFT with a high floor price or me giving you a token to trade or whatever. I just expect you to come to consume content or to compete or join some of these user acquisition campaigns for games. But what's about to happen next year is, I can't tell you too much about it, but it's going to add way more dynamics into why you would come to games.gg. Like there's going to be something for the speculators and the traders. There's going to be something for the competitive players. There's going to be something for creators, and there's just going to be something for everyone across the board. And one of the really core things that I'm excited about, I think I spoke about this earlier with you as well, Ben, just the ability to actually own your gaming progress and identity on the blockchain, I think is something super exciting that a lot of people have promised to deliver, but I don't think anyone's managed to crack it yet. If and when we do it, I think it'll be just really, really, really groundbreaking in terms of like the potential it opens, because we're not trying to do this to like flex and say, oh, come to us because we've got the coolest like passport system or whatever. It'll help you get into other games in a much more seamless way as well. Because the idea is, if you own that identity, you can like jump into any game and maybe you get even like a free skin or something in that game for owning the identity. But at the same time, you can constantly keep adding and tracking your progress. And so you become a higher value player, meaning, I don't know, like you were just saying earlier, your brother plays a lot of FPS games and you check all the shooters with him. Like imagine your brother being able to flex that beyond just taking screenshots of like his, KDA on Call of Duty or whatever, like being able to actually show that over the last 7 to like 10 Call of Duties he's played, this is his KDA and this is his rank and this is how many kills he managed to get. And, this is why you should recruit him as a playtester for your new FPS game. Like that's what really excites me, because it adds more value back to the player. And to me, it's like, okay, I'm giving my friends more and more reasons to come into this space. That's kind of the idea.
Oh, I absolutely love it. Yeah, especially my little brother would have every single golden gun that he's been grinding countless hours from every single Call of Duty. It'd be nice if that just didn't live on some server that got wiped for space back in, 2015.
Exactly, man. I mean, like, for example, I don't know. I this is probably one of the things I flex the most in terms of like gaming, where I managed to platinum Modern Warfare 2 back in the day, like the original one. It's not really a big deal, but when you look at it, it's like I'm one of 7% to ever platinum Modern Warfare 2 out of like, I think over 1 million players worldwide. I'd like to flex that beyond taking a screenshot of my trophies on my PlayStation, right? Like I'd like to show that off on a profile somewhere. And I think a lot of people would like to do the same with like their hours of CSGO. Like I've played, over 10,000 hours across multiple accounts. I think my newest account probably has like over 1,000 or 2,000 hours alone. And like, I have to log into Steam, take a screenshot of it, come back out, send it to you. Like it should be a lot easier to show that progress. And it should be a lot easier for games to see that progress, because realistically, there is no way for a new shooter in Web3 to actually like recognize who are the best FPS players in the space. Right? The only way is if they ask you your Steam ID or if they ask you like your PSN ID and they go check manually one by one or whatever. But when you add kind of like an identity layer that already does that job for you, it's really easy to just filter out like who plays shooters, who plays MOBAs, who's challenger in league versus, who just likes playing I guess, solo queue or who likes jumping into storyline narrative games. Like, I think that segmentation doesn't really exist yet, because that market isn't like mature enough yet. And so right now in Web3, it's like everyone plays everything, right? You see like content creators, they'll jump in like a TCG, and maybe it's the first time they ever play a card game. And then like right after that, the next stream, they'll be playing like a battle royale. And then the one like there is no sense of, I guess, niching down in the space, because you don't know which games are going to do well yet, right? And so what we're about to do is just going to kind of do that at scale, where you don't really have to like go super deep on something, but you can hedge your bets across the board. Where as a game, you can just target better, but as a gamer, you can also just, actually play the stuff that you like, right? Like if you're into shooters, I don't need to show you like 5 MOBAs, 2 TCGs, and a bunch of boring like simulation games. I can just only show you shooters if that's what you're into.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I want to actually jump back a little bit because you mentioned how somebody like Ubisoft's coming in. Um, I'm really fascinated by what these bigger businesses are going to be doing. Obviously, you have a lot of experience like working with Ubisoft, NVIDIA, Epic Games, Riot, etc. So, from your perspective, and maybe that was a while ago, and so you're not as in tune with what they're doing, but how do you think they're seeing it from the perspective of they do have those players that are going to put in 10 or 30K a year and they're going to do that on repeat because they need to be able to compete. And they see Web3 and crypto being like, wow, we're coming in and we're trying to threaten your, dominance as this, this force of gaming. What are they thinking about what we're doing? And how do you think that's going to play out?
I think it's similar to like the iPhone and the BlackBerry story, right? Where just BlackBerry refused to adapt to the times, and they refused to like believe that this new smartphone idea was going to take over, and then that's kind of why they declined, and they continued to refuse it until they essentially just shut down and lost the business completely. I think there will be companies like that in traditional gaming that will refuse and will probably continue to lobby and vouch against Web3 tech in games if it threatens, their margins, and if it threatens the money they're expecting to get. I think, EA is probably, in my opinion, one of the last studios or developers that will enter Web3 gaming, just because I think it takes so much money off their plate. But we've seen already in the past couple of years that Ubisoft has been flirting with the idea for the longest time. I think I probably know way more Ubisoft, like ex-Ubisoft employees that got into Web3 games or started building Web3 games than any other company. And I don't know if that's like a culture thing. I don't know if that's like a shift in the narrative and more openness from their side. But Ubisoft tried, they got a lot of backlash, and then they kind of shut down the idea. But now they're coming back in, I guess, different formats through 2 different games. And they're very straightforward about it. I mean, if you go to the Champions Tactics game, which was just like doing a free mint a couple of days ago, they had an entire FAQ like list that was explaining like what's the blockchain, why are we doing this on the blockchain, how do I mint an NFT. They still sound naive, which tells you that they're not there yet, because like I don't know, they were saying it's a free mint, you only need gas, so make sure you have around 0.01 ETH in your wallet. And I was like, yeah guys, that's not enough to mint anything on Ethereum at the moment. So you can tell they're still like new, but I think the appetite is there, because I guess one of the things that I noticed the most, because I still talk to my friends that work in the esports scene, and I was just at the Blast finals for Counter-Strike between FaZe and Vitality a couple of days ago in Abu Dhabi. And the thing that I hear the most is like Web3 seems to have this edge in terms of appeal from, I guess, an incentive standpoint. Like, for example, Shrapnel isn't as big as Rainbow Six or Call of Duty or whatever FPS title, but Shrapnel can say, "Hey, we're doing a $3 million Shrap token tournament in 2024." That doesn't happen in these other games. It's either like you've got a really big tournament organizer and maybe like the max still goes $1 million or whatever, or all of these like smaller tournaments and leagues, they tend to have like 50 to 100K max maybe prize pools. And then I've also seen so many smaller tournaments, right? And so there's this like different appeal to it where the stakes can actually get higher. You can actually see pro players wanting to. I think the only reason we haven't seen more pro teams and players is obviously the games are not ready yet. But if and when the game's are ready, I think it makes way more sense to like, you know, as an FPS pro player to enter a game like Shrapnel off the grid and like make way more money in one tournament than you would have made like streaming an entire year of Call of Duty. So I think that appeal is definitely there. I don't necessarily think the tech appeal is as big as we would like to think. Like I think for us internally in Web3, like we like to think the tech is great and that'll attract people and blah blah blah. But like I think we overrate it a little bit because for the outside world, for the player that's just trying to have fun or whatever, it's different incentives. It's either you can make more money playing this game, or it's you actually don't have to spend the same amount of money you're spending on these other games every year, or it's you can actually get rewarded for putting time into this game. So, that maybe that's in the format of joining tournaments and winning, which technically you can do in esports, but esports tend to be way more saturated in like these bigger titles. So you can be one of like the first players that come into the scene. Like there are so many different appeals for different players. And I think that is why games are starting to cater to the idea. In my opinion, like the game that has actually pulled off interoperability the best is Fortnite. Like that's not a question, that's not a doubt. Like you look at Fortnite bringing in Lego IP, bringing in Dragon Ball Z, Star Wars IP, like all that stuff. That's what like Web3 games have been saying they'll do for the last couple of years, right? Like the ability to have your assets live on the blockchain and come into games and out and jump back out and so on and so forth. Like Fortnite's doing it. They just like they haven't really like put the Web3 tech behind it. They're just doing it as like a standard traditional game kind of thing. And you see people appreciate it. So like you can tell as a proof of concept, as a case study, like these things work because they do see spikes when they add new IP into the game. They do see spikes when they have something like the Lego mode enter the scene and so on. So I think we're just getting more and more validation for Web3 tech. But I think the future is to like just merge and become a new form of building a game as a studio, right? Like I don't think we're going to keep calling it Web3 gaming for a very long time. I think we'll probably do it for a couple more years easily, but soon enough, like it's not going to matter anymore, because if Fortnite starts doing it, or if Ubisoft starts doing it, or whoever starts doing it, like it'll no longer be like this new concept or whatever. And so you could just shut up and call it whatever it is. Like it's a battle royale with asset ownership or something, right? Like that will become the norm. But I think, yeah, for a lot of traditional studios, they're very cautious. But you can see there's appetite. Like Sony filed a bunch of patents for NFTs in their games on console. I think like the narrative is shifting. We're probably, it's cliche to keep saying we're early, but we're probably at the cusp of seeing a lot more inflow of users, because once off the grid lands on console and people see what that's going to look like, once games like Oh Baby Games and Oh Baby Card and so on like enter the scene with traditional IP, like I just saw they got SpongeBob as IP in their game and stuff from Paramount, like that will shift the narrative further and further and further to the point where like you'll no longer be able to distinguish between what a traditional game looks like and what a Web3 game looks like. Like I'd love to see the day where I can drop League of Legends for like a Web3 game to play it with my friends. That day hasn't come yet, but it seems like we're starting to get there.
I'm so excited about that. I'm literally so excited for the moment when literally there is no distinction between Web3 gaming and gaming. And I think kind of like nodding to what you're saying. Like, I think that's right around the corner. I couldn't be more excited. I mean, I think 2024 is going to be one of the most, from every perspective, like the games launching, people trying to wrap their heads around it and not getting scared off, like easier onboarding, assets going absolutely buck wild. Yeah, I think it's going to be a crazy year. So I'm excited. I'm even more excited kind of hearing, what you, from your perspective, what you kind of see is coming down the pipeline. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So I can't wait.
Yeah, 100%, man. I mean, I'm excited about 2025 and 2027 and 2030 and, like all the years to follow, where we don't have to sit on this podcast and like talk about what is Web3 gaming and where is it going. We'll just be talking about like what's the hottest game right now, and how game XYZ managed to onboard 100,000 users in like a week. Like we'll start having very, very different conversations. And the reason I started off by saying like I think we're in a very familiar place. Is like I saw that when Fortnite, League of Legends and all these games were first coming out, where like that concept of like free to play was just unheard of, right? So when League first came out, like it didn't make any sense because everyone was buying CDs, everyone was going to arcades and like paying money. Like the concept of playing a video game for free was so new that they like weren't taken seriously until they then became the biggest game and became the most successful, and now everyone's trying to follow Riot's footsteps with their games. I think we're there, right, where it's like a lot of ridiculing, a lot of like early, oh, these guys are crazy kind of talk, but once someone gets it right, the narrative very, very quickly changes, and all of a sudden there's like a case study to go by where it's like, oh shit, like if they could do it, I could probably do it, let me give it a shot.
Oh yeah, and I think as much as we're advancing, the rest of gaming is also like falling back. Like there's so many die-hard fans of these series, Call of Duty. I'm a huge fan of the Total War series, and people are just feeling like screwed over. Like these games are neglecting these communities that they literally built empires off of. And it's honestly nice being in our space because it's made me feel a little bit better as a gamer that there's now some upside to getting screwed over by all of my favorite games, which I'm like, you're just paving a path for a disruptor. Like it never gets talked about, but one of the like biggest advantages of Web3 gaming has nothing to do with Web3, which is Discord. It's games being built ingrained in these communities. Like it's what we've always dreamed about being like, oh, Call of Duty should do this. Actually, this makes no sense. What if you tried this? And now people can just hop in there and be like, at head dev, like, this sucks. This would be a much better way to do this. And then they'd be like, oh, you know what? Actually, 50 other people said that this sucks as well. Maybe we should get rid of this feature and put in something new. And I've gotten to see that in sort of Dead Drop's iterative process with their snapshots of like getting user feedback or pixels, or there's so many games that have been able to like ramp up and cater to their community where you've got to have a spine in some instances and be like, hey, this isn't the game for that. But I think mobilizing the community are the trends that are really going to like set our space apart and really just define gaming. I mean, you see in Fortnite, their UGC is exploding alongside the interoperability. And these are sort of the trends that a lot of our sort of industry is built on.
100%, man. I mean, I think, yeah, it's definitely a dream. I'd love to be able to, like, at someone from EA or at someone from Call of Duty and like ask them like, why on earth are you making these dumb decisions? And obviously, that's not been an option. And now you can do it with like pretty much everyone, right? Like, I literally bump into someone from the Shrapnel team in almost every single gaming event I go to. All over the world, and so it's really easy to just say like, hey guys, like this really sucks, by the way, you should probably change it. And I think you could do it in traditional gaming, but you had to be a really big creator, and so it was kind of a bit more siloed off to like the ninjas of the world and so on, whereas now it's like anyone with any kind of audience size, as long as you're making sense, you'll probably get more people nodding to your point and you'll probably get attention. We're even seeing it with games that are not even announced yet. Like you look at Overworld and the Mint and all the drama that happened and stuff, and like you can talk to the founder. It's not like, oh, this company screwed us, I hate this. It's like you can jump into Twitter or Discord and say like, hey, I don't think this is cool, it was too over allocated or whatever, and like have the founder reply, sorry guys, we messed up, we'll make it better for you, here, apologies, etc., etc. Like I think that, yeah, 100%, it's definitely not talked about enough. It goes back to my point earlier about like, if you're building right in Web3 gaming, you probably started off with the community first, and then the community becomes your lifeline essentially, right? Because they are the ones that vouch for you, right? You have these like maxis that pick sides, and they're like, they make their entire like online presence revolve around the game or revolve around an ecosystem. Like I know so many Illuvium only Twitter accounts and so many like cross the ages fans and like people that live and die by whatever immutable posts. Like that doesn't really exist anymore in traditional gaming. You maybe talk about subreddits and stuff for games, but like how much attention they get from the actual like founders and developers, yeah, definitely doesn't even equate, because like founders now feel like they have to prove themselves and they still need to like earn the respect of the community. Whereas like in traditional gaming, it's like, dude, we're Activision, you're buying it, we don't care, right? It's like, I could do whatever I want, you're still gonna buy it, shut up, like go on with your life. Like they make really bad decisions that I think paved the way, like you said, to Web3 gaming, like choosing to not carry over skins from like Warzone 1 to Warzone 2 is such a ridiculous decision. And you just know they're asking for it. Like they're literally waiting for a game to like say, oh, we're launching a new season and you get to keep everything. And I think the ones that are most likely to do that are obviously the Web3 gaming ones. So yeah, 100%. I think it's definitely an angle about Web3 gaming that doesn't get much attention, but it's definitely a superpower in the space.
And I think what you guys are working on is going to take that to the next level where you can actually, Ben pings me, I'm, the head of some game and he's like, hey, blah, 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 you should change X, Y, and Z. If I can then go and pop open his, games.gg report card, so to speak, and be like, hey, like this guy has been playing since day one, hasn't missed a campaign, logs in X amount of hours every single month. Like maybe we should listen to what this person is saying. So I think that's going to be just like another aspect of having that sort of, I'm saying report card or like permanent record or sort of like all your accolades is going to be able to tell like, okay, maybe this is someone that I'm looking to listen to or potentially onboard onto the team to give advice.
Yeah, 100%. It's like, proof of play or whatever you want to call it, where it's like, is this person just waffling on the internet or like, do they know what they're talking about? And it's like, either they know what they're talking about because they've played your game from day one, or they know what they're talking about because they've played every single game in that genre for the last 5 to 10 years. And regardless of, either one of those things, you probably should pay attention to that user. I think that's something that really excites me because, we always talk about Web3 gaming and just Web3 in general, like having so many bots and like multiple accounts and all that shit, which to be fair, like, I don't think maybe people don't realize, but like, dude, there are multi accounts in traditional gaming as well. I've got like 6 League of Legends accounts on like 4 different servers. But for some reason, we look at Web3, we think bots, I guess, because it's about money and financial incentives, and we think it's such a terrible thing. But essentially, like you can validate if all 6 are the same person, or if I have 6 different identities. If I've only played one game on one account for 2 hours ever, or if I've played like tens of hours across the board. There will be so many cool ways to like segment and target where, also like just the sense of fatigue will go lower because all of a sudden you're not going to get bombarded with the same shit that you don't really like. For example, I don't know, maybe you don't like TCGs at all and you're just sick of seeing a new TCG launch every single week. Like that experience becomes suddenly personalized and curated for you, where it's like, okay, chill. If you like shooters, we'll only show you shooters. Here's what you need to pay attention to. So I think, yeah, I mean, that's just one of many features that we're looking to add to the platform, but it's something that really excites me because, like you said, we're kind of the middle person, right? We're the ones that sit between the gamers and the games, and we tell the games what gamers think, or what are they paying attention to the most or whatever, and then we tell essentially the gamers what we think about these games, or what's the quality or what's the score or whatever, through essentially reviews and so on. And so I think we're in a pretty important position, which feels like a responsibility almost, right, where you have to be very transparent, very honest. It's quite funny to me, like people think it's Web3, and if you're working with some games and if you do any paid stuff, then it means like these games probably have the highest ratings, et cetera, et cetera. Last year, EVE.io won 2 awards, and I think their score on our platform is like a 6.5 or a 7 max. Really doesn't like mean anything, right? For us, like the number one core thing is about the user. If we do a quest with a game, or if we talk about a game on our YouTube channel, or if we do anything to bring exposure to that game, we're never, ever, ever going to like change the tone or narrative about what we think the game is, unless if the game actually goes through changes that warrant those, re-reviews or whatever, right? And so like we really take it super, super seriously, the responsibility of being the filter, because my idea about this is like, let's say we're just friends, right? And you say, hey, Omar, what's a good game? And I give you a very shit recommendation. You're never asking me again for any game recommendations, right? It's the same as movies. It's the same as shows. So if you come to our platform and you recognize that a game is terrible, and then you see we gave it like a 9 out of 10, you're never coming back. Like we've lost you day one. Versus if you come to our platform, you recognize the game is shit, and you see you got a 3 out of 10, you're like, okay, hold on. like these guys are legit, right? Like they know what they're talking about. Let me pay attention. If they're giving this a 3, which maybe I even think is like an overstatement, maybe it was a 2, but if they're giving it a 3, if they're putting like their neck on the line, let me look at what they're giving 8s and 7s and 6s to, because I might enjoy that a little bit more.
Oh yeah. I mean, integrity in this space is such a great way to be able to differentiate yourself. There's so much noise, like paid for noise, that being able to have, someone who's going to be willing to tell you the score and stick to it is a really good way to differentiate yourself. The more and more I listen about the vision and all of the um, sort of like features and things to come on games.gg, I mean, you guys could end up as, a massive gaming like data company. I was sort of thinking about like, people look at Tesla like it's a car company, but really Tesla's a data company, and it's priced appropriately. So curious, do you guys view yourself? Yeah, obviously, you're pooling so much of this. Do you guys view yourself in that light, or am I a little off base there?
Nick's onto us, maybe more than anyone else in this space. No, 100%. It's, I guess you said Tesla. It's I'd say more Amazon, in a sense where data is such a big part of what we're doing, and we have so much data about all the users, obviously, but also like all the games and everything that's getting clicked on a daily basis. Where we are going to reach a point where we can do anything we want with that data, right? So any product that we want to push out, any feature, any kind of, I guess, new service or whatever, like we'll be able to literally hyper target, laser focus on the right users for it. And in the same way that Amazon started off with books and then ended up selling like pouches and lights and DVDs and so on, right? It's just the ability to maximize the, I guess, customer experience convenience element, where it's like you really just feel like this is curated for you, it's personalized for you. You make all the right decisions immediately as a consequence, and then that becomes kind of your favorite go-to platform or store. And then you just choose to buy there forever, right? So you start off buying a book on Amazon, they build a profile about you, they know exactly what you read, they give you really great recommendations, you keep coming back, and all of a sudden, like, they know you need a dishwasher, they know you need to order, new lights for the ceiling or whatever. Like, that is how Amazon grew to become what they are. I'm not saying that we are going to become Amazon, but the vision is definitely similar in a sense where it's like today we're just really curating the experience for you, personalizing it, trying to make it as easy as possible to jump into these Web3 games based on the data you're about to give us. Like tomorrow, I could fill the gap by telling you, hey, are you missing like really cool keyboard and mouse? Like, here's products you should check out or something. Like, that's not out of, I'd say the scope long term, but I will always call it what it is, which is we are improving the Web3 gaming experience. That doesn't mean we are a Web3 gaming rating company. We are a Web3 gaming quest platform. We are improving the experience, can mean a lot of things down the line. So I think it gives us flexibility to then, launch new products or new features or new iterations that will continue to complement the core of what we do. So started off with just this thing that looked like a blog that was giving ratings for games, but then ended up turning into like this platform that lets you play the games, that lets you jump into quests that track your progression inside the games and gives you rewards based on it. Like, as it continues to evolve, that database is just going to continue becoming more and more powerful. And like, we know exactly what Steam games you've played in the past. We know what Steam games you've played in the last 7 days. Like, we know what type of shit you like. And so it's really easy for us to tap into that data and say like, hey, Nick, I think you might like this, by the way. And then based on your behavior, I can keep doing that moving forward, or I can be like, okay, I'll stop. I'll let you do your thing on the platform. So yeah, 100%. I mean, you're not far from it when you talk about kind of the vision and scope long term, but obviously we've got to crack it step by step. So I'm not going to say, hey, we're building Amazon today. Like, we're far from it. But I think if we keep going on the same path and route, like, that's the idea long term, essentially, where it's like you're building essentially a platform that through Web3 tech and through all the features that you have can essentially distribute rewards, can bring attention to certain games or certain products or certain services. And that can be really powerful because you're so niched, right? Like, it's only gaming. Like, we're not, like, none of the users on the platform are, I don't know, people that don't like gaming. Like, there is no use for you, so you don't interact with it. So every single user, at bare minimum, is interested in gaming or interested in Web3 in some capacity, right? The perfect mix is kind of the one in the middle where it's like you are a gamer, but you're also Web3 savvy. But now what I can keep doing moving forward is like educate, right? So if you're only a gamer, but you've never played a Web3 game, I can educate you about Web3 gaming and get you to try something out. If you're only into like Web3 for whatever reason, I can maybe like flirt the idea or like, seduce you into getting into gaming, because maybe in some capacity you don't have time, but you might jump into a casual mobile game. So we can start doing so many different things based on personas. And, obviously that's the plan long term.
I love that.
No, sorry. What were you going to say, Ben?
I was gonna say I love that, and yeah, there's a reason why Nick is on this podcast and one of the co-hosts, and is one of the leaders of Neo Tokyos, because he's very smart and picks up on that stuff. So definitely not an accident that he figured that out.
Oh, I'm like high on the idea. I'm like just like pissed I didn't know about that $2 million raise. Because just like the possibility, like my mind just sort of gets spinning on like, okay, not only just what games you played, like that's important data, but when you have the overlay of achievements and stats, you can learn something. If when you were playing Animal Crossing, did you spend all your time in the museum? Like filling it up full of fossils, or are you spending all your time fishing? What's your average amount of time playing? Then you can match that with average game length if it's a multiplayer game. I'm super excited about the possibility. And sometimes like placed ads can get a negative connotation, but the way that I look at it is like, why do you get really good recommendations from your good friends? Because they know that you used to play Harvest Moon when you were 12 and were obsessed with the relationship track there. And they're like, yeah, Stardew Valley, you got to freaking play it. So yeah, no, really excited about what you're building over there.
100%, man. You're spot on. I think, yeah, just the ability to like tap into all those different gaming personas. Like there are so many different types of gamers. I think, we look at it as like, oh, I'm looking to acquire gamers. It's like, yeah, but what type, right? Because there's like the type that wants to complete every single side quest and get every single trophy and complete like 100% of the game. And there's like the type that just wants to jump straight into ranked because they're competitive. And there's the type that just wants to like kick back, lay on the sofa and play for fun for a couple of hours. Like there are so many different types of gamers. And the more you know your audience, the better you'll get at curating and personalizing the experience. So yeah, 100%. Like I view it exactly the same way. Like we're trying to essentially be that friend that onboards you into Web3 gaming by saying like, hey, you just linked your Steam account and we realized that you played a lot of Dota. Maybe you want to check this game out, right? And so doing that at scale is where you then, essentially achieve the growth that we're trying to achieve, which is like, instead of having someone in Discord that's like, hey guys, like, what are you into? And like going step by step, trying to recommend stuff to you. It's like at scale, the platform is like speaking to you based on your past experience. The more information you can give it, the more interactions you have with the platform, like you favoriting games, you joining certain quests, you completing certain missions on the platform, like that will keep feeding into our data funnel and we'll keep feeding, better experiences back to you, right? For example, like when we launched the Play Now functionality, essentially you can play any browser game on the platform. But what we started realizing is like, okay, so if this person has spent like 40 hours playing Mighty Action Heroes in the last couple of weeks, then maybe they're going to enjoy a similar, mobile casual battle royale type game. Let's recommend XYZ to them, right? So doing that more and more and more so beyond just Steam, beyond, Epic, going all the way into like every single possible like integration that we can get into, whether it's Blizzard or even potentially Riot Games down the line, etc. Like I think that opens up the door for so much in terms of the possibility. I think you're definitely spot on there in terms of like, that's why I started off by saying I call it a platform. Some people call it a super app. Some people call it IGN. It's like you can call it whatever you want, but like if you get the vision, I think that's when it flips the switch in your mind and you're like, okay, holy shit, wait, like I get it. Like it's not a quest platform. It's not like just discovery. It's like this thing that I think could be really big if they manage to do what they're trying to do.
When retro NT round? That's my question. No, yeah, I kid only partially, but would love to just understand also, because you're a citizen. Welcome to the to Neo Tokyo. Welcome to the Citadel. Would love to just kind of understand, what you think of Neo Tokyo and how that kind of plays into your vision and where you kind of see Neo Tokyo as part of the whole Web3 gaming situation. And then I know we're coming close to the time that we booked you in for, so do want to be respectful of that. We do have a couple other topics after that too.
It's a funny lore story, really, because I was around when back in the day when you had to collect all the clues and solve the puzzle and get to the final codes and put those up. And I think my wallet was on, I think it was like the third or fourth list or whatever, but I didn't actually manage to mint. I don't know if you remember back then. Can't remember what it was exactly, but I think people were copy pasting the wallet addresses and then putting like the code or whatever, and then they could mint on your behalf or some shit like that. I can't remember what it was exactly, but I didn't manage to mint, so I was obviously very very sad and upset. But obviously, I've kept up with Alex and Elliot over the past few months and obviously the years before, and so when kind of Alex and us started talking again, I think it just made a lot of sense to get into the conversation on a deeper level, I guess. Whereas, we've talked and worked with Elliot in the past through Super Farm. And it was just, okay, maybe we should just take this extra step and jump straight in and communicate and connect with all these great founders that were joining, a lot of which are friends. So, you think about Merit Circle and Shrapnel and Pixels and all of these games that you mentioned earlier. But obviously, there are a lot of new names and faces as well. And I think it's an important community to have, especially when you're looking at kind of such a new space, right, where there's a lot of noise. I think being able to like tap into a community that has founders and a community that's been, I guess, seasoned veterans from last cycles or whatever, I think it helps to have like that extra friend that can guide you towards what to do, what not to do, things that they've done in the past that they regret, or things that they wish they would have done differently. And I think being able to join that conversation refreshingly as a founder, like I would have just been the new kid in town the last time, and I would have been like looking for the alpha and trying to figure out like, guys, tell me like what am I supposed to do in this space, blah blah blah. Versus like now it's like I'm coming back in and saying, okay, guys, like we've built this thing for the last couple of years. Would love to work with whoever is trying to get into the space, or actually would just love to like onboard anyone that's been thinking about the idea. Because I think gaming is such an easy concept to grasp. Like it's so hard to explain DeFi concepts to people where it's like, oh, so lending, staking, yield, this, that, you got to do this, etc. Versus like, you just got to play the game, like it's such an easy conversation to get into. And you can always connect on it. I think it's so underrated. Like we're now reaching this age of AI and all this shit where people are like worried about the future, blah, blah, blah. I think you need to remember like people connect with other people, and gaming is such a pure form of that connectivity where like you make games, you make friends playing these games, or you grow relationships in these games, right? Like I know so many friends that I'm still in touch with that are just like online gaming friends, right? Like I've maybe even never met them before. And I think that is what Neo Tokyo kind of looks like to me now, where it's like people that I just see in the Discord that maybe I'll never meet, maybe I will meet at some point, but if you're willing to take time out to explain to me like how do I stake my citizen and get bytes and stuff, and like if you're willing to let me know like how do I get into these early rounds and put money into games that I believe in, like I'll appreciate you and I'll remember that. And for the years to come, I'll always remember, hey, this dude that had like a funny PFP, or this dude that cracked the funniest jokes in the server or whatever, helped onboard me and got me in. So I think, yeah, communities is such an undervalued element of it. It's really like the core of Web3, really, if you look at it. Just being able to kind of build with the community. And I think the fact that you've got stuff like the Launchpad that, essentially is just community built. I don't expect it to be like the last product that comes out of that community, because when you have people that are either really interested, really connected, or really knowledgeable in the same room, you tend to get a lot of, fireworks, if not just purely motivation and inspiration from everyone in the room.
100%. I mean, you're looking at another product that came out of that same ecosystem. I mean, we're building the Senti pod Interlinked, and this is essentially a media company that was incubated within the Citadel. So exactly like what you're saying. But yeah, really excited that that you kind of see that same vision as us. And we've just had so many amazing founders come in, and the vibes are so good. It really is a gift, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
But
ever since we said, or I think it was Alex that announced it, that we joined, I got a lot of DMs from like game founders that like, yo, bro, how's it like on the inside? Is it worth it? Should I jump in, etc., etc. And I do think like it really helps to just have like a community that you can always tap into, and potentially like if you're just a solo, like I'm not gonna call it founder, I guess, but if you're just like a person that's interested in the space and you've always wanted to do something and you don't know what, like yeah, bumping into like Ben or Nick or whatever in the Discord can lead you to then, start the next company idea, start a media company, start a launch pad, start whatever it is that you want to start. So yeah, I mean, for that, I think it just makes sense. Like for us, it's a very silly, easy decision to make, where it was like, dude, we're so intertwined with the space. Like we're betting on all these games, we're betting on all these founders. Like screw it. Like let's start betting on communities as well, because these communities are where people will flood into when Bitcoin keeps going on an up only rally, and it gets crazy and everyone's looking for like the next alpha and everyone's trying to get into all the right calls and so on. And so like you got to be positioned in those communities well as well.
100%. 100%. Dude, thank you so much for coming on the pod today. Just want to, give you a shout out for that. I know it's like probably 4, maybe going on 5 a.m. Where you are. So maybe we'll get another, super early morning tweet out of you at some point. But just want to say thank you
I can't
again.
sleep because I'm on this podcast with Ben.
Yeah, exactly. We keep asking questions, but yeah. So just want to thank you again. We do have a couple other topics that we want to touch on, but feel free to hop off if you need to. And yeah, just want to give you any final thoughts on Games GG. And then yeah, either stick around or hop off, whatever works for you, buddy.
Might stick around for a couple because I saw some juicy topics on that Excel that you shared with me. Yeah, I think in terms of, I don't have anything to show except saying if you're interested in Web3 gaming, or if you like the conversation and you want to learn more, just jump into games.gg. That's 3 instead of the E. Everything that you will need to know, or everything that you need to keep up with the Web3 gaming space. So we've got everything from curated content, reviews, guides, news, quests that you can join and start playing games and earning rewards that go beyond just the standard token in game and all that stuff. But also a lot of really cool events as well that you want to keep an eye out on. We do this award show once a year. We've done it 2 years in a row now. This last one that we just wrapped up had over 36,000 viewers on Twitch at peak. And I think it's sitting on like 280K or so views after the first couple of days. So definitely make sure that you're keeping up with the content that we push out. Want to give a shout out to you guys, obviously, as well for having me on. It's always great to have these conversations and speak to people that I think understand kind of where the founder is coming from, because it's always easy to just say like, what do you think about the space? What's going to happen next? Blah, blah, blah. But like when you start digging deeper, and like, I think the shared vision that the 3 of us had in terms of like what we could do and the potential and data, etc., I really appreciate it, even as a 4 a.m. conversation. I'm sorry if I was rambling on for longer than you might have wanted, but you have basically like peak performance Omar brain right now. It's like no sleep, but all the excitement and adrenaline. So yeah, thanks for having me on.
There we go. Absolute pleasure to have you on, buddy. Really appreciate it, and definitely want to encourage everybody to jump in there. Nick, unless you have any other last thoughts there on that to round us off, want to hop into our first topic of the week.
No, just, high off that conversation, that, that's a lot of fun being able to dive in and sort of war room the future. That's kind of the stuff that I live for. So no, just happily living the dream over here. Obviously very appreciative of Omar with you joining, and really enjoyed that portion of the convo. And let's hit us with some topics, Ben. What are we talking about?
Let's do it. So I think we've all seen, and much to the happiness of those who have held bags, that Solana has been absolutely pumping. We hit almost $100 per SOL, SOL. TVL's jumping. It broke $1 billion, which was the first time since FTX. You can double check me on DeFi Llama. Obviously, it's going to fluctuate, but it did break over $1 billion when we were doing this research. Guys, Solana's big news right now. It's pretty hated before. Some people thought it was going to die. Got the Solana phone with the bonk airdrops on it, so people are, they're FOMOing into buying secondhand phones or trying to get new phones that haven't been wrapped. So, what's going on with Solana? What are you guys' thoughts on there? Yeah, want to open it up for discussion around the Solana breakout.
Well, first I'll confess, I completely missed the entire thing. I missed the entire run up. I had zero, like I think I have like $5 less like of Solana left that was like yielding in my Coinbase wallet. So that was like on my list of like, oh, I'm gonna pick up some Solana. I'm gonna pick up some AVAX. I'm gonna pick up some Ronin. Thankfully, what I did ended up picking up was gaming coins, so nobody's crying for me. But yeah, missed out on the Solana run. But who doesn't love an underdog story where everyone's just like, not that they were
Mhm.
necessarily an underdog, but in the aspect of like after the FTX thing, I thought they were fucking dead. And to come back and absolutely tear, it's been really fun to watch and really cool for all the projects that, we were just talking to Honeyland earlier today. But a lot of the projects that built on there are now seeing those benefits.
Yeah, man. I think just to chime in here, Solana's probably when you talk about community, it's one of the best out there in terms of like the community of developers that they have, the community of builders and founders, some of which might have jumped ship when the FTX thing happened, which is I think understandable, and you can't blame them for it. But realistically speaking, like you go to any Solana event and it's always packed. Like it doesn't make sense, right? Like you look at the token, or you look at sentiment on Twitter or whatever, and then like you just show up to a Solana hackathon or something. And it's like, bro, like where are all these people coming from? I think it's one of those projects that are just purely moved by the community, the developers, the people that believe in the potential. I think, we meme it a lot. We say, it's the only chain or blockchain that has gone down like 6 or 7 times in the last 12 to 18 months. We say all these things about it, but in the end of the day, you got to like respect the fact that they've persevered and persisted throughout all of these black swan events that could have very easily wiped projects completely. You look at something like Luna, and that's essentially gone. It's become almost this like meme coin that only pumps based on news or whatever. But you look at Solana, and like the FTX thing should have killed it, but hasn't managed to kill it. And knowing people in the Solana Foundation, Matt and Tiffany and everyone else that's out there, I think the narrative hasn't really changed for them. They've always been kind of building the thing that they've wanted to build, and whether or not there's essentially they're getting the hype and momentum now, but I think more than anything they'll appreciate the fact that they're, I guess, gaining the street cred back as well, because it's essentially just free BD for them, right? Like right now, when you see a token go up and people are just calling it a Solana rally or whatever, you'll start seeing projects say like, hey guys, we'd love to build on your blockchain, or hey guys, we'd love to connect with you and work with you. And I think when that happens for any ecosystem, it really like just bolsters their ammo a bit, and they can start flexing their guns and say, hey, look at all these new founders that joined us, or look at all these cool products they're building on us. Games like Star Atlas that have committed to Solana from day one and haven't, jumped ship or haven't changed their mind or whatever, will probably also like feel the same way, where it's like, okay, we're back, like we got this. Like people were saying everything's going against us, but we held on, and now it's time to rejoice. But I think it's not all time high yet. They can still hit higher, and I'm not here to speculate on token asset price or whatever. But realistically speaking, as an ecosystem, I think if you've been actively part of just the Web3 gaming space and the Web3 space in general, you recognize the power Solana has from just a cult perspective, right? It's very similar to Arbitrum. It's very similar now to like Avalanche, where it's just like there's a cult of like people that breathe Solana, and they just want Solana to do well because they're building cool things on it.
100%. I think it's so interesting too, because like if you look into if you look at like the fundamentals of Solana, whatever fundamentals mean for for this entire industry at this moment, but if you look at like fees generated by the blockchain, right, and then the fact that their whole shtick is they want to go to the smallest amount of fees, like the lowest transaction volume, which is where the fees come, and then they also have inflation, so they're emitting, they have a cost for emission there. So that doesn't necessarily make sense, right? Yet still, we we saw it pump so hard. Personally, I'm so very glad that that happened. Like I rode that up from, about $22 ish, and probably caught a 3x, and then I hopped out and got into a gaming token. I'm not going to shill on this. But it was like let's just say it was like a Rollbit competitor on it, and that is already 3x. So it's like, thank you to Solana and the Solana ecosystem. I'm very grateful. But like seeing that, it's like, how do you actually value it? I have no idea. Then it's like, okay, well, you can use it for, like, it's useful, right? You can use it for DeFi purposes of borrowing and lending and providing liquidity and generating fees and profit that way. But yeah, I don't fully understand like what the use of the Solana token is, right? Because like one Solana should last you into infinity as far as the gas goes. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure how that works. Besides, like, people want to bet on it because they're like Solana's going to keep going up. So I don't actually know why the Solana token is accruing value. Besides the fact that people are betting on it and number go up. So I don't know why, but it's like, hey, who can argue with that? Because it's happening. It's happening right in front of our faces. So it's really, really interesting to see. You also mentioned Arbitrum, which I also thought this is a very good time to talk about this. Arbitrum went down for a little bit of time. I want to get the exact article here, but yeah, last Friday, December 15th, there was a report that there was a partial outage because of the spike in transaction volume. So what are we thinking? Like, Arbitrum stops working, Solana's absolutely pumping. Like, are we seeing a tremendous amount of usage because, hey, we're back and there's adoption, or is it more of like, oh, this tech is just kind of breaking in, people are just kind of gambling? Pairing that and this question with also, games are reporting to have hit new levels um, of monthly active users. Like we have Army of Fortune reported to hit over 500,000 monthly active players. Congratulations to them. Their CMO is a citizen of Neo Tokyo. Shout out to you. We've just seen like Pixels hit hundreds of thousands of users. The game you mentioned earlier, 20 million users. Like that's incredible. So are we seeing real fundamentals of the industry go up, or are we seeing like, you know, just kind of these vanity metrics and people are betting? I don't know. I want to pose the question to you guys.
Yeah, my thoughts on it are it's a little bit of a chicken or an egg kind of thing. Because as these tokens begin to accumulate, and some of these smaller gaming tokens, it doesn't take a lot. Obviously, when you're really degen and you're looking at 5 to $25 million market cap, if you can get something below five, power to you. But that also could be, vaporware for all you know, often. But once you get that sort of lift and people are like, okay, well, if I play game Y and grind it, that token might actually really be worth something. So you're getting that sort of like SLP sort of thing going on where then the chain's getting a lot more use, the games are getting a lot more use because like did the game suddenly get better like than it was a month ago? Sometimes. The hype's coming in. So, it's interesting to see is a lot of that traffic sort of people who are trying to get like well positioned, obviously people who are farming big time about, let's say 2 months to a month ago, just absolutely killed it playing that game. So I think there's a little bit of that fever in the air because it's always tough to tell when we're playing in such a tiny space. Are we getting new entrants into this space, or is crypto in general, who missed the gaming run or the metaverse run the first time, coming out of their DeFi hole, coming out of their, traditional NFT space hole and being like, all right, well, I guess the game we're playing is gaming and I want to get mine. So, it's always a little tough to tell what the actual root cause is.
I think it's narratives, to be honest, more than anything. I don't think we're back yet, and I do think just looking at like the fear or greed index and seeing that we're obviously in the greed kind of phase. I think we're probably due a retracement. Hopefully, it's not too severe and it doesn't punish too many people. But I do think the fact that everyone thinks it's up only season usually means that it's not up only season yet, at least. But I think narratives is what really is moving things around right now. Because you look at, Solana, it's purely like people that maybe missed on Bonk that are looking at other like meme coins on Solana that are now, starting to use all of these dexes. And you look at, NFTs on Solana as well. And like they're also picking up Steam. So I think there's the narrative there for Solana, whether it's like the ETH killer narrative that they had the last time we were in, I guess, the bull run, or if it's like a completely new narrative, which is like, I missed out on XYZ, but Solana's still picking up, and technically the all-time high was, multiples of what it is right now, so it's not a bad time to buy. I think that's what's really driving a lot of kind of the numbers and the traction that we're seeing in terms of like gaming. I do agree to a certain extent. It's maybe people opening up a bit more to it now, where it's like last run, maybe you were looking at like IDOs and DeFi a bit more seriously, but now you're looking at gaming and it's like everyone is talking about gaming, right? From the biggest creators to the smallest communities, like everyone's saying this gaming NFT minted for free and it's now on ETH floor, or like, this thing was on pre-sale for like 0.15 ETH and now it's sitting on a 2 ETH floor if you're talking about like an overworld or whatever. And so people are like FOMOing into gaming as a narrative, and I think it's got a really strong narrative, right? Where it's like, what's going to bring you the most users into the space? Is it like bankers and people that understand finance and DeFi, or is it like a bunch of idiots that play video games? Probably the second. Okay, cool. Let me jump into gaming, right? So I think that's where it's coming from. But obviously, it's great to see like that there are reasons for some of these blockchains to go down. It's not reassuring whenever a chain goes down, and I think that's what maybe the Avalanche guys continue to flex and boast about. Where Avalanche, luckily, knock on wood, hasn't gone down yet in their history before, but realistically speaking, like, okay, is that a good problem to have? Maybe, right? Unless if it was like something that went wrong. Realistically speaking, if you were just not expecting the stress test or whatever, and you were surprised by the volume, then okay, there's some argument there. But obviously, like, these things will affect these ecosystems long term. Like, I don't think Solana has lived off the 7 like downtime periods that they had yet. Like, people still remember that, right? And people that maybe paused during the bear, or people that left the space, or people that are about to enter the space, like, they'll hear about that and they'll be like, okay, maybe I should be careful, maybe like I shouldn't hold too many bags or whatever it is. But in my opinion, as long as there's transactions happening on the blockchain, the only reason, like, honestly, realistically speaking, I've held a lot of Solana up, I've held a lot of Solana down, but the only reason I continue to hold Solana is like I actually interact with Solana projects, meaning like maybe I go to Magic Eden and I want to buy an NFT and I've got to pay in Sol or whatever, right? Or like maybe I'm trying to buy a shitcoin and like I can only convert from Sol to whatever coin it is because it's on the Solana chain. So that's really why I have Solana, and I think it's probably the same case for people that are using Arbitrum. It's probably the same case for people that are using AVAX. And that's not a bad thing because it's the closest we can get, funny enough, to what you were mentioning, Ben, like with fundamentals, right? It's like if you're buying a coin and you don't know what it does, the fundamentals are probably either not clear or not already in play. But if you're buying a coin and you can use it, then realistically speaking, the fundamentals probably maybe already exist and you're seeing them in front of you, right? You're talking about like there's so many projects that like they don't do anything, right? Like it's a token and it just pumps based on speculation, or it dumps based on like news or announcements or whatever. But like it doesn't do anything. You cannot like use the token. But when you talk about like Solana, Arbitrum, AVAX, all these like ecosystems, you can use the token to like buy NFTs, to maybe stake and actually get yield or whatever. Like you can do things with the tokens, and that to me is the closest we'll probably get to fundamentals in a lot of projects. But it is refreshing to see that we're getting into that zone again, because for the longest time in the last 12 to 18 months, we've just been like hearing about OpenSea at all-time lows and all these ecosystems with like all-time lows and transactions and stuff. So it's always nice to like hear the hype and just like the FOMO kind of kickback.
Yeah, I love that. One of the next that we kind of touched on a little bit was just a lot of IP going on, like Oh Baby Games. There was an IP integration with SpongeBob that was reported. We see that a lot of games are just moving forward. Like here's the media sharing an official gameplay trailer. Pixel Race Club partnering with Exterio. Seems like Avagachi's doubling down on gaming in 2024. There's collabs going on left and right, and then Champions Ascension launched on Amazon Prime Gaming. There's also a very silly named game that I'm not going to mention, but I think we all know what that one is. And there's been some colorfully some very colorfully named coins going out there and taking the meme world by storm. So I'll leave that one up to y'all's imagination as well. Yeah, would just kind of love to get your thoughts on like, IPs going crazy, games are going crazy. Like Maple Story raised $100 million. There's just a lot going on. It's very exciting to see. I think this is probably one of the better signals of like, hey, things are really heating up, and like all the billions of dollars that were invested back in 2021, like these things are now starting to really take shape. Like you mentioned, Overworld had their big launch. Very grateful for that. Thank you. And like people are just going buck wild. It's great to see. Like there's mergers and acquisitions going, there's IP going, games are kind of going crazy. It's really good to see. Just kind of want to open that up to the round table here for some discussion.
Yeah, I mean, any sort of IP integration on the level of SpongeBob is just, good for the space. It's a validation to have, speaking of empires, I mean, SpongeBob is an empire. I mean, people rep SpongeBob clothes, people like their merch, the TV shows, like to get that sort of like validation of the space. And, Paramount obviously holds the keys to a ton of IP. I don't know. I don't know if they actually own SpongeBob. I don't want to imply that, but they've been getting very into the space. So, the interoperability we've seen, as you were mentioning earlier, Omar, we've seen how successful that is for Fortnite. It's been a dream of gamers always. I think it's a spot where I am really excited about Ubisoft. I go back and forth on Ubisoft. They just hurt me with Assassin's Creed Mirage, which I can truly only recommend to like diehard Assassin's Creed players because don't get me started on that. But sometimes I want to shake Ubisoft and be like, finish Skull and Bones, like make a good Assassin's Creed, like do what you're supposed to do, and then you guys can come over into Web3. But all jokes aside, like the second I can play, Pixels or Shrapnel and use an Ezio Auditore like avatar, like I'm going to do that all day.
Yeah, 100%. I think IP is probably maybe one of the, I want to say easy, but it's also risky, but it's one of the easier ways to get into Web3 if you're like dipping your toes. So like you look at, Paramount and SpongeBob, like that's probably just a kind of a test where they're going to see what the sentiment feels like and how people respond on both sides, right? Where it's like, is it, open arms from the Web3 gaming community, but is it also like resistance and pushback from their own kind of existing community? And yeah, you talk about like Paramount, they've got so much more IP that OBB games can tap into, whether it's like Transformers or whatever. So I think it's obviously great, and we're seeing a lot of it happen across the board. I mean, Aether Games, I think now, I don't know if this is official or announced or whatever, but there's something going on with Wheel of Time, the Amazon Prime like IP as well. So there's a lot of stuff that's happening where like these really big names are getting into Web3 in like a limited capacity, right? And then there's like the Ubisoft where they're like full on committing, building a game, like allocating resources and putting their neck on the line, which I respect just purely based off the fact that they're willing to take that first mover like advantage / risk, right? Because like if it goes really well, everyone will say Ubisoft was a pioneer, they did it first. If it like doesn't go well, everyone will say Ubisoft's an idiot, like why would you do that? So I respect that, as much as they also frustrate me because Assassin's Creed games have just been on a decline for the last couple of years. But yeah, it's definitely a good signal for the space. I think at some point the Epic Games announcement used to be a big thing. I think we're now past that, where reportedly somewhere it was like we have, I think, almost 70 games, Web3 games that are self-published on Epic Games Store. So I think it's almost become a norm now that self-publishing is an option. And even with like the fiasco they had with delisting Gods Unchained because it was flagged as like adults only by the ESRB rating. And then I think that lasted for like a couple of days. And then Epic Games came out with an announcement saying if a game is tagged as adults only because of blockchain, we're not going to delist it. So, Gods Unchained winning that fight for everyone was kind of like a nice,
Huge.
aha moment for us where it's like, take that, suckers. Like everyone thought, okay, all the Web3 games are now going to be delisted. So yeah, all these things are just great signals for us as a space where it's like, a sense of maturity, a sense of openness, a sense of like just validity coming from traditional gaming or traditional IP, where I think the more we start seeing that, the more it becomes the norm, the more it'll get like easier and easier to actually just see people jump into these games and into these ecosystems, even if they don't recognize or realize that they're doing anything on chain, right? Like if I don't know, jump into game XYZ and like buy a skin, but behind the scenes it's minting a skin for me. I've just interacted with your chain without really knowing that I'm interacting with it, or without really knowing like what the gas fees are or any of the stuff that goes behind the scenes. And stuff like this is possible when you look at, Immutable saying they're gonna waive all gas fees on their ZK roll up. So yeah, man, it's definitely an exciting time to be looking at, but also building in Web3 gaming.
Oh, it's big stuff. Dude, I so badly want to talk about the Aether Games alpha that you're talking about, but I don't know if we can. So I'm not going to be the one to spill those beans, but that's so exciting. I can't wait for that to happen. Okay, let's move on before we accidentally leak that. Let's go to our next topic, which, speaking of IMX, I think that we are now seeing the holy trinity, if you will, the triple threat, the three-headed dragon. I'm gonna stop with that analogy now. But Merit Circle Beam, IMX, and Polygon have now completely teamed up. They are forming the triangle of crypto gaming destiny. I had to just throw in one more of those, and they have partnered up, and they are now totally taking the world by storm. I mean, just if you look at IMX and Polygon, those together have, I think, we had Marco on last week. I think he was saying they have like 70% market share in the gaming ecosystem, just by themselves. So now the beam's there, it's like, whoa, look out. And we kind of did a bit of a deep dive there where it's like, Merit Circle is kind of their investment arm, their incubation arm. They built some tools that they learned about from doing their investing. That was put onto their subnet, which is Beam, which is an Avalanche subnet. And then they took a lot of the tools that were really, really helpful from there. And now they're using Beam operating system, and they've integrated that directly with IMX, which obviously builds with the Polygon ZK EVM. So it's really cool and intricate partnership to where games don't have to choose. They can just go work with all of them. I think this is a huge step forward. I think partnerships like this, where it's like, and one hand you might be a competitor, but on the other hand, this industry is so small, we should just totally work together. Like, we are seeing that in action, and they're going to freaking crush it together. So just kind of want to open it up. I think this is a huge step forward. I'm very excited for it. Obviously, everybody's bags have been very grateful for that too. So again, thank you for that. But want to open that up for discussion.
Yeah, I think that's the real, like, besides building alongside of our communities, the ability to collaborate, there's such a competitive nature to, particularly like where my experience is, and a lot of the big gaming conglomerates have been these, competitors in the public market and are either so big that it's hard to bring them together. Besides Fortnite, who's done a really phenomenal job of showing what's possible in that space. But just super excited, particularly on the infrastructure side, where, instead of getting wrapped up in maybe egos, which can easily happen, of being like, okay, how can we make the best possible solution by utilizing sort of like the gasless nature of IMX, or the soon to be gasless nature of IMX, the, all the excitement and all the cool features that Beam has, with ZK Sync, with, just being able to bring this all together to really deliver the experience that we need to make this seamless, because we're not there yet. I mean, as things stand today on like the traditional chains, like it's a big lift moving around assets. Most of them are not fully integrated into the game, where, I use this analogy today, like people on who don't want to manage their guns in GTA by shutting off their Xbox, opening up their laptop, popping open MetaMask, and then like, moving things around. Like you want it inside of the game. And this is a big step to that. And again, just very bullish on collaboration and in the space. I saw something really cool go down in we did a collabed AMA with GGH and Shrapnel and Star Atlas. And at the end, they just we're having a moment between the two of them being like, oh, how could we collaborate? It'd be sick if there was, maybe a crash ship in the, shrapnel map from Star Atlas or, a shrapnel themed like starship. Like, that's what gamers want. That's what gamers always have wanted. They just want these crossover episodes where, Superman links up with Batman and kicks the shit out of the Joker. That's what really gets people excited. I mean, Marvel built an empire on it to, use that phrase one too many times. So yeah, all about collaboration. Very exciting stuff.
I'll be that guy. Fine. Okay. I I'm all in on the collaboration side, and I love the fact that I no longer have to, pick and choose because just being positioned where we are and working with PokeStarter for a long time, I tended to be the person that game founders would ask like which chain should we go to, and then I would answer based on what they're looking for, whether that was like a grant or marketing support or whatever. So I'm glad that some of them are starting to work together. However, I maybe don't fully see the point in that partnership just because, again, being devil's advocate here, if you're building on a subnet on Avalanche and Immutable is essentially building on a ZK rollup on Polygon, like when you start working together, what's that going to look like for the native chain in question, right? Where it's like, are your games then going to have like majority of their transactions happen on the rollup on Polygon side? Is it going to happen on the subnet only? Like, where's that crossover? Who benefits? Who doesn't benefit? I think for everyone, it's like net positive because for Polygon, it's like more BD that they don't have to do themselves. For Beam and Merit Circle, maybe it's like more, I guess, validation and like another door to like the arsenal of games that are rightfully so. The largest market share is on Polygon and Immutable side, but I don't see it, and it's something that I had a conversation with some of the team members from some of these organizations about it. I love Marco, I love Irv on the Polygon side, and George and everyone on that team, and obviously everyone on the Avalanche side, but also on the Mutable side. And to me, like from an outsider perspective, knowing what the nature of their organizations is doesn't make sense to me. But from like just a signal standpoint, like, okay, this is pretty cool. It's like a bunch of really big names in the space getting together to do something. I just don't know if there's actual like value that's about to come out of it for those specific ecosystems, because I think it will tend to be skewed towards one or the other, meaning like this collaboration might mean that all of a sudden like there's just too much happening on the Polygon side and not much happening on the Avalanche side, and now like the Avalanche party is going to be a bit upset. Or maybe there's going to be a lot more happening on the Avalanche side, and like Polygon's going to be like, well, you're not meeting, the terms of the agreement or whatever. So to me, like I'm a bit cautious with these announcements where it's like, it's not really like a huge signal for me. It's just a nice moment to have in the space. But yeah, 100%, like I'm all in for collaborations and building stuff together and like sharing resources and features and products. But just to be that guy, because you're both very excited about it, I have to say, I don't know if it's that exciting, but I do hope we get to learn more about it, and it changes my mind, I guess.
No, absolutely. I'm glad you brought us down to earth a little bit. It's easy in our space. It's so easy just to like, you get a little spark. You're like, let me just pour napalm on this. Like you could just get so excited so easily. And to put my cynic hat on, like there's a portion where it's like, okay, Polygon's a bit stale narrative wise. Like it was a big like player in like the last run. IMX still has a little bit more of that shine, I would say, compared to like Polygon. And then you've got Beam, who's like the new sexy kid on the block. Not, they're not that new, but like certainly in this narrative, like they're getting a lot of hype and attention instead of having like a an IMX or a Beam as an IMX killer if you wanted to like draw from like the ETH Soul AVAX, like to be able to head that off and be like, no, actually we're all together this new sexy thing. Napalm, like, you can definitely see how that could be done as well.
Yeah, that's where I'm like,
100%.
okay, so it's a bargain that you're now, or it's a bet that you're making, where it's like, do you want the IMX killer narrative, or do you want the collaboration narrative? And then which one is going to be more beneficial long term? Because some ecosystems and products benefit from like being labeled XYZ killer, right? You look at the Solana rally, the last bull run, essentially, it was primarily driven by people calling it an Ethereum killer. And whether or not that's true, or if it's ever going to be true, like primarily that's what drove Solana up back in the day. You look at the other ecosystems around it, and they were then labeled the Solana killer, the XYZ killer. And I don't know like if this is going to bring them as much in terms of like equal value or more value, or maybe less value than being labeled like a competitor with IMX or a competitor with Polygon. Realistically speaking, the way I see it is like Polygon has grown so much that they can't really do the BD themselves. Like it's reached a scale where like they just can't keep up with the amount of games building on Polygon. Immutable is still like very aggressively like acquiring games and studios and bringing them in. But every game that Immutable onboards technically is beneficial for Polygon because they're using their ZK rollup. So it's like a win-win. Polygon's essentially like outsourced its BD to them in a way. And then like Beam coming into the mix, it's kind of like a slightly different narrative there with the subnet and wanting to flex like the Avalanche tech and everything that promises to do. And so it's like, okay, like how are you going to position yourself, and how long is this like friendly collaboration narrative going to play around? Because quite frankly, you might reach a stage where it's like, okay, guys, maybe we need to like get a little bit more competitive. Because I think competition is good. I think competition pushes you to like improve and try to, beat the other component, like the competitor, and actually deliver better products. So I want to wait and see. I've got bags in all three. I'm excited about all three. I know a lot of games that are building on all three, and so to me it's like, okay, like let me watch this play out. But when I saw the news and everyone was like, oh my god, this is amazing, I was like, I don't get it though. Like, what about it? This is amazing. So yeah, I'm sitting on the fence for this one. But like I said, I love Marco. I love the Beam team, the Immutable team, the Polygon team. So it's great to see everyone kind of come in together and actually try to do something together for the space.
100%. And I actually really like that you brought up I'll say the counterpoint to that, because a lot of times we do get into like an echo chamber in all of crypto, and we're not immune to it. So I really, really appreciate you bringing that up. And yeah, I guess we'll see. Like, I think from my perspective, it's like Beam's tools that did first originate on their subnet, or on their AVAX subnet, which is Beam. I think they've taken those tools and now they've natively like ported them over, So I don't necessarily think that it's going to be like there's like the Beam chain versus the IMX chain. It will, because if like, if a game wants to go on more of the like Ethereum pathway and the L2, then it'll probably, benefit there from going with IMX or Polygon, or that trifecta there with the Beam tools. But if they're going more the Avalanche route, then they might choose to go like either AVAX or then going to Beam, which is that whole side of it. So to me, I actually think the biggest winner, and this is going to be my prediction of it, but I think the biggest winner from this is actually going to be Beam, because now if a game goes the Avalanche route, most likely it's probably going to go to them or Avalanche, but then it's going to be very interoperable between all those different pieces. Or if it goes the other route, like the ETH L2 route, then that hits IMX or Polygon most likely, and then Beam's natively integrated there. So I think Beam actually just hedged, like, because they could have gone the direction of being an L2 or being an L3 on top of IMX or whatever that may be. I think they just hedged, like they're like, we're going to build on Avalanche and then we're going to port our tools on the ETH side. So they've kind of got both of those covered. So I actually think the real war is going to be between EVM and Solana. Like, I think Solana is the one that's coming in, and it's like, that's the big like head to head where that's going to happen. That's just my prediction. So we'll see. But yeah, I really do appreciate your thoughts on all that stuff. Okay, guys, we have two other big topics there, unless you guys have any other further thoughts on this last topic. Actually, I want to pause for a second. Do you guys have any other further thoughts on this topic? If so, go ahead.
No, I think that was a good, I think we dug into it well.
Yeah,
Perfect.
good way to view the whole topic. I would just add more than Solana to that final um, note that you added towards the end, where I don't think it's just going to be Solana versus everything EVM. I think there's new players on the block with, Ronin now essentially trying to get into that same kind of realm. I think
Yes.
Sui, or Sway, however you want to pronounce it, is about to announce some cool shit in 2024. So there's definitely going to kind of be that same narrative we had last time, which was like, this chain sucks. You got to move into this new cool shiny chain because they do this better and that better. And I think that'll come back. And I think people will start going back to their biases very soon as their bags, continue to grow. And as much as everyone's probably already made money on the three tokens that you've already mentioned in Polygon, Immutable, and Beam, I think there's still money to be made, and therefore there's still bias to be created or formed around chains and ecosystems.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great addition. Okay, two other big topics here. One of them is incredibly bullish for gaming, which is that Google gave the green light on their advertising products for some blockchain and crypto. One of the parts of that were given the thumbs up were things related to blockchain games. So we basically got like a huge thumbs up from one of the largest advertisers on the planet. This opens up, in my opinion, the ability for games to rapidly scale with paid media. For those who don't know, I've spent so much money buying ads in my lifetime. It's an ungodly amount. I'm grateful for the results of buying ads and getting the customers and blah blah blah. But sometimes it's sickening to think about how much money I've put in their pockets. But it works. So the fact that now games, blockchain games, and crypto games can use that, I think we'll see how effective it is. But it's like that's a huge opportunity and a huge advertising channel that just got opened up. To me, that's super bullish. That is like confirmation or validation or whatever you want to call it from one of the world's largest companies. That to me is extremely positive and very good news for the space. Opening it up to the round table here.
Omar, I've been getting first bite of the apple on these topics. I'll send it over to you.
Yeah, I feel like we built this like unspoken rule where Nick always goes first. But yeah, I think
Reverse,
if
reverse.
yeah, if yeah, just going back to it's the same conversation we've been having. It's more validation, it's more openness and less resistance. I think the Google Play Store earlier this year already like announcing kind of their new rule set or terms and conditions for like games that have blockchain tech and NFTs integrated was already like a win. I think this is obviously a step further, and I think we will continue to see more and more steps. I'm personally like this is great, but I'm personally excited to see like what happens with consoles because I think as soon as like Off the Grid and Godzilla and some of the other games that are planning to launch on console, like Sony and Xbox probably, hold the most weight in terms of like just player bases and access to gamers and stuff. And when that like starts to happen, I'm just genuinely curious, like if the games are going to get shit on, if there will be issues, if they will get delisted, if any of that stuff will happen. Because I think like we're now familiar, like Epic is no big deal anymore. Steam, people can get into if they just remove the Web3 component and like have it as a Web2 game, I guess. Google Play Store, technically the App Store as well in a certain capacity. Like we have a lot of games that are now in the App Store. So I think like these realms are now free to explore for game founders, and user acquisition is starting to look like it's easier and easier to come by. But it's like I'm excited about the new things that we haven't done yet. Like I can't wait to see if Sony like slaps any game that tries to get into this, PlayStation Store, or if it like welcomes them with open arms. That's like, okay, yeah, this is exactly what we're looking for, right? So to me, yeah, it's a great sign that we're moving the right way. And honestly, like when we did the awards this year, like we had executives from Amazon and Google on board in the jury, and that just told me like that the conversation wasn't new anymore, right? We even had someone from Xbox as well. Essentially talking about director of partnerships, like that is a person that is probably going to be going back to, the office and talking about all these like cool, maybe not amazing looking yet games, but like definitely exciting games that they've seen in the form of that awards show. And to me, yeah, that's just like a really good sign. I think we have gained so much respect and validation over the last, I'd say, 18 months or so compared to before, because it used to just be like such a taboo topic. Like if you talk about NFTs and games or Web3 gaming, like no one respects you. It's like laughable. Like, why would you do that? You're shooting yourself in the foot, blah, blah, blah. Versus now it's like, oh, there's like terms and, regulations and rules, and like you can actually do it. Just be careful. Don't break any of them, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, the Google news was great, but I'm excited for like the news yet to come. Like I can't wait for 2024 and 2025 and whoever else decides to open up the door.
Yeah, and I think really this is an example of a trend that I've witnessed in a few different spaces. The first one that really opened my eyes to it was the cannabis industry. That was an industry I was super focused on when I was in grad school. I was really interested in and thought I was going to be pursuing that, as a career. Ended up getting fed up with the red tape, so I went to where there's no red tape. Crypto is about the exact opposite, at least from a user perspective. But that trend is gain in purchase power. And at the end of the day, there are a few things as democratic as a free market in that money talks. And, you saw the cannabis industry. You saw this with the UFC. When the UFC started, it was super pushed back against. Like in the early days, it was hard to get them on television. Then it lost its ability to be on television. But at a certain point, you grow past this critical mass where you start to have influence on the world stage. And we're seeing that in crypto. And I think we're just starting to see it come up in crypto gaming, where on the crypto side, it's now becoming part of the political discussion. Coinbase just ran that big ad that there's, 70 million voters in the United States that, have touched crypto. And I think we're seeing that with gaming where, if we're big enough and there's money, at the end of the day, these giant gatekeepers are for-profit companies and they have a fiduciary duty to their shareholders to grow. And we are a growth addicted space. And so once a space gets big enough, you can't really neglect it from the Google Xbox perspective. It's a little bit different with games, but we're starting to see that itch away as well, where games have like more of a defensive play where, we're just trying to give the App Store money. They're still going to get their 30% cut. So I think this is a cool example of that. Just to touch briefly on the console front, we had a great Discord AMA with Compete where they really peeled back some of the layers of what it was like to be talking to Xbox and what they're sort of like looking for and what their policy is. I was surprised at how accommodating it is. I thought that was going to be a hurdle that might be, maybe 3-5 years out, but it seems they're much more, interested in approaching and being accommodating to that space and, having a member of Xbox on the judges panel for the game awards as an example of that.
Yep. Love it. I think it is part of the same conversation we've been having and full steam ahead. Maybe not steam, but full blown ahead. Let's keep going. I love it. Last topic, guys. We've been going for a long time, so I appreciate everybody's stamina and willingness to keep going at this. Omar, it's got to be at least 8 a.m. where you are. So,
A couple of hours.
The sun's rising over the desert.
Yeah. Need your coffee soon. Okay, so last topic here. China has recently launched their real DID using blockchain. So China is using the blockchain, and the initiative intends to verify the identities of China's 1.4 billion people. The initiative is led by China's Ministry of Public Security, along with China's blockchain-based service network. So the benefits of it to them are users can register and log into websites without revealing personal information, but that means the government has all of their personal information. And so, maybe a good thing in some ways, maybe a bad thing in some ways. It is it is definitely something where decentralized identity systems are being brought to the national level from one of at times the most aggressive countries to pivot and like move very quickly on things. Obviously, they have a very very centralized decision making system that comes straight from the very very top. So there's no bureaucracy to cut through. So in my mind, it's like maybe we see some incredible proof of concept for blockchain and how powerful that is for the world. And maybe this may not be the best application for the people over there. Maybe that ends up having repercussions around the world in other ways that we're not thinking of. But maybe that also is somewhere where we're like, okay, well, now it's proven that blockchain can work on a national level because one of the world's largest countries, economically and population wise, are relying on that for critical national infrastructure for their information system. So I don't know exactly how to feel about it, but I wanted to bring it up and get y'all's take on it.
Yeah, and I'll restore balance to the rotation by hopping in first. Uh, uh, you know, China's always going to be a double-edged sword when it comes to crypto, in my opinion. There's some good evidence out there, at least, some arguments, I believe, from like I really like reading Arthur Hayes's blog. And touching upon how important China is to the overall sort of like bull market from a financial power standpoint. And I think you're going to see things like this, which could be bullish and validation for the chain, and then you're going to see counter examples where actually the value sets of other parts of the world are actually going to jive a little bit more with certain portions of it. Anonymity is not something that I think is going to, I don't see China, throwing grant money at something like Tornado Cash, for instance. And then even on the gaming side, maybe a little bit of, I don't want to call it alpha because it's not exactly bullish, but some other news that came out of China today is that they're going to limit the amount of tokens that are available inside of games specifically. So they're putting forward gaming legislation that actually pushes back on that. And I think that's going to be which makes sense from their perspective. They've had sort of a limiting standpoint on games. We've seen this with, limited amount of time that people of certain ages are allowed to play games. We've seen, sort of social credit score come into play on how much you can play and such. So I think it's just going to be, a double-edged sword to like kind of go back to the initial analogy that, there's going to be some things that are quite bullish and, you see Hong Kong coming online. And also today they said they're getting teed up to allow for a Bitcoin ETF. But I think the best way to understand what China is going to do is more than the West, where we can get a little bit confused because we've got so many different opinions that are pushing against each other. China's always going to do what in its best interest for China. And in some ways that's going to jive with cryptocurrency, and in some ways that's really not. And I think they're going to take an a la carte approach and be like, hey, this aspect actually really works well, and this aspect actually doesn't work well, and we're going to go all the way out and ban. So I think it's going to be just a couple examples of the mixed bags that we're going to get out of that space.
Yeah, whatever you think about China and their policies and how they run the country, I think it's no secret that they're definitely much further ahead in terms of like openness and adoption to new tech. You talk about just like Southeast Asia in general and how like embedded blockchain is. Like you've got housewives that own crypto in South Korea and the Philippines essentially with the whole Axie craze. Like I think that side of the world is definitely further along. And for a good reason, right? Like stuff like this, where the government is taking action and is actually trying to enforce like regulation and having clear like terms. I think this is where like the US gets the most criticism, right? With like the SEC constantly jumping back and forth between, what's a security, what's not a security, versus like being very upfront and straightforward about like, you can do this, you cannot do this. Why? Well, screw it, because we're the government. We can say whatever we want, but at least like be upfront about it, right? Like don't play a guessing game where it's like every day a founder is trying to figure out if they're, going to get the FBI knocking up on their door, or like the SEC or something, because of the asset that they have created or circulated or whatever. So I think it's definitely you can argue all you want about how it's going to work for the country and privacy and all of these things. You can have your own opinion, and I have mine on kind of how China already like runs things. They already kind of have this I can't remember what it was called, but you essentially like you just look at a camera and you can get into the subway based on like how much money is in your account, which is all like centered in this like system that they've got over there. And so like they already run things a bit differently compared to the US and the other parts of the world, definitely compared to Dubai as well. But I think more than anything, it's the ripple effect that I'm looking forward to, right? It's like people across the border that then look at this and be like, holy shit, like they just did it for over 1 billion people. Like, why can't we do it for like a measly 100 million or something, right? Like it becomes a question of like, if that tech at scale works, like who are we to say the blockchain might collapse when we've got like, I don't know, dude, Dubai's like 10 million people total, right? Like we could easily use the blockchain for everything if you're talking about like, your Emirates ID or your, passport or whatever. So I definitely think it's exciting just because of the like ripple effect and the repercussions and what happens next and what that means. And if it works, how does it work? And I think different countries will have different versions and iterations of that system, and we'll probably see more of it down the line. But the fact that the blockchain is not a taboo topic will always be like my number one thing, where it's like, I'm glad this is news, right? It's like, it's not just Discord servers and Twitter and like shit posts. It's like governments making decisions. And I think that's a very, very, very good sign for the industry, where it's like, you're taken a lot more seriously now. Like this is essentially where very sensitive data is going to be stored in arguably one of like the most powerful nations in the world. There's no reason to assume that other nations will not follow suit, or that other nations will not look at this and at least think about how they could do something similar. Forget nations, you then look at companies and they will definitely get inspired. You look at individuals and they will definitely get inspired. And they'll probably watch from afar, and they'll probably use this as a case study, and they'll, tell you why it sucked or why it was great, and they'll have their own version. But the fact that this at scale is going to happen is like, that argument we always talk about, where it's like mass adoption, mass adoption, mass adoption. Like what's more mass adoption than like over 1 billion people getting essentially onboarded into the blockchain through something that's just going to be like their daily life, right? Like they're not transacting or anything specifically because they want to buy Ethereum or Sol or whatever. It's just like they're going to take the subway and that's going to be stored somewhere on the blockchain. They're going to make a purchase like in a grocery store, and that's going to be stored somewhere on the blockchain. And I think that to me is the most exciting thing.
100%. And I also think what it does is it paves the way for others to follow suit, just like you were saying, and it could almost be something where like, and in my opinion, I think the US should like try to front run all this stuff and be the leaders, and let's get back to innovating and entrepreneurship, which is what has allowed us to, be great in the ways that we are great. Obviously not perfect, but there are some areas of greatness. Like let's continue to support entrepreneurs, because in my opinion, entrepreneurship basically can fix just about anything. Maybe that's a hot take. I don't know. I don't think it should be. But yeah, the fact that 1.4 billion people are about to come like fuck up a system and show us where the flaws are in it and how things can be done and what works and what doesn't, like that to me is very exciting. And I think it's just another piece of evidence or another milestone on the way to pumping our bags to Valhalla, bringing this whole industry to where it should be and where it can be and where it can go. And at that point, nobody can ever call bullshit on blockchain or say it doesn't work, because it's like there's too much solid evidence. It's irrefutable. So I'm excited. I'm very excited. And I appreciate you guys' take. Guys, we've been doing this for, I think, about 2 hours, maybe a little bit longer. It's been a hell of a Friday, a hell of an episode. Omar, thank you so much for coming on the pod. Really do appreciate you. Nick, as always, thank you for being my partner in crime here. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Much appreciated, Omar. Great having you on, and excited that you were on for our first double-hour episode. We've been talking about really putting the long form, and I think this was a great one to.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Just my luck. Yeah, make it all the way from 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. on the first double hour episode. But no, I mean it's a good sign. It means the conversation was good enough for me to survive 2 hours in the morning off of zero sleep. But yeah, appreciate it, guys. And yeah, definitely excited to listen to all the other episodes moving forward as well.
Awesome. Appreciate that, guys. We'll see y'all in the next episode. Take care.